Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Shah Weekly. In this video, you're going to learn how to send local notifications in a SwiftUI application. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is create a very simple interface which will be composed of a button. The button will simply say schedule a notification. Schedule a notification. And whenever you will press that button, it will schedule a notification that we can see or we can experience in our application. Whenever you are trying to send a notification, it is always a good idea, or else it's not going to work, is to request for authorization. Authorization simply means you're asking the application that is it okay for this particular app to send a notification to you. It is also important that you authorize the app to use the notification as early as possible. So in a SwiftUI application, I'm going to jump into my app file, which in this case is Hello Notifications app, because that's the name of the project. And inside over here, I can construct the initializer or init. Inside the initializer, I can go ahead and request the authorization so that people will be saying yes and they will be getting the notifications. The first thing I'm going to do is going to get access to the UN User Notification Center and the current instance, which is a singleton. Next, we can use center.requestAuthorization, and we can perform or pass in different options so that we can say authorization for an alert, authorization for a sound. So these are the kind of notification that we can receive, and a badge. And a completion handler is going to give you the result and an error. If, however, there is some error, then we can simply say, well, print it out, or say that, well, you didn't really give us a notification authorization, so we can't really do anything about that. All right, let me go ahead and run the application and see what happens. So I'm going to run the application in the iPhone 13 Pro Max simulator. It's going to launch in a moment, I guess. There we go. It's trying to launch over here. You can see that. And as soon as the application launches, it is going to ask us that, hey, the app name would like to send you notification, allow or don't allow. So I'm just going to say allow in this case, which means that now my application can receive notifications from this application called Hello Local Notifications. But now the question is, okay, how do we send a notification? I'm going to go back to my content view, and inside the button click handler, the first thing I'm going to do is get access to the notification center, which is UN User Notification Center.current. Next, we will create the content. Like, what will your notification display? So I'm going to create the content using UN mutable notification content, and we will allow the user to assign the title. So I'm just going to say hot coffee, but obviously this can be anything you want. Some sort of a body for the notification. So this will be a little bit more additional stuff that you're providing. Now you can type anything you want over there. I'm just going to put that your coffee is ready or something. All right. And that is pretty much it. These are the only two things you actually need. All right. Now the next thing you need to do is to add the request or add the notification to a particular request. But first we need to also create that particular request. So let's go ahead and see how we can create a request. Create a request. Let request equals to UN notification request identifier. And now this can be any identifier you want. Make sure that the identifier are unique for each notification request that you're creating. I'm just going to go ahead and say identifier for now. the content that you want it to be part of this notification, well, the good thing is that we already created the content and the trigger. So in this case, we also need to supply the trigger, which is basically saying that when will this notification be called. So I'm just going to go ahead and say trigger over here, and we will need to create a trigger. The trigger can be based on many different things. It can be based on the date, it can be based on the time, it can be based on the location. So I'm going to go ahead and create the trigger for the notification, which will be based on the time. And it will be using UN time interval notification trigger. The time interval is going to be 5 seconds. So this means that in 5 seconds, this trigger is going to fire, and it's not going to repeat. Finally, we can go ahead and add the request that we just created to the notification center. All right, so let's go ahead and add that. I'm just going to go ahead and simply say center.add a request, and we can pass in the request that we just created with a completion handler. It's going to pass you the error if there is any error. We can unwrap the error if there is any error, and we can go ahead and print it out. All right. Okay, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and actually run the application. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that once we press on this schedule button, let's go ahead and pull it up over here. There we go. It's going to start the timer, and after 5 seconds, it's going to show us a notification if our app is not in the foreground. So if I simply tap on it and just stay over here while the app is in the foreground, I'm not really going to see the notification. So next, let's go ahead and tap it again, but this time I'm just going to hang around on the home screen. And I'm going to see if the notification gets fired or not. And there we go. You can actually see right there on the top, the notification is there. So if I click on the notification, it simply launches the app. So definitely the notification is actually firing, which is great. And it shows us the notification as soon as the 5 second time interval right here is actually over. Now, this is all great, but we can also provide some actions on our notifications. These actions can be, anything that you want, like some custom actions. So let's go ahead and do that. Define actions. Our first action will be a dismiss action. We will use UN notification action. And now again, we have to provide some sort of identifier. It's always a good idea to use the identifier that are unique. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to create an enum which will define all of my different notification actions. You can see that there are only 2 of them, dismiss and reminder. Now we can go ahead and start using those. So for the identifier, I'm simply going to pass in notification action dot dismiss dot raw value, some sort of a title that you want. I'm just going to say dismiss. That is perfectly fine. And the options, which I can simply pass in an empty array. The same exact thing we can create, but instead of the dismiss, we're going to call it reminder. And instead of dismiss over here, I'm just going to call it reminder. And for the text, it will also call it reminder with no options. All right. Now, even though we have created the dismiss and the reminder actions for our notification, we need to create some sort of a category where we can add these particular actions. Once again, the category name should be unique. So I'm just going to go ahead and first create a general category. And I will say UN notification category with some sort of an identifier. This identifier must be unique, so I'm just going to go ahead and create another enum which will define these categories. Now I can go back and set this up. I can call this notification category dot general dot raw value. For the actions, we can pass in both the actions, so dismiss as well as reminder. The intent identifiers are used if you're using series shortcuts. Now, I'm not using any of those things, so I can simply pass in an empty array. And for the options, again, I can simply pass an empty array. Before we move further, we need to set the notification categories. So center.set notification categories, and simply passing in the general category in the array. And this is it. Let's go ahead and run the app. And now you will see that when we press the schedule notification and we are hanging around on the home screen, we're going to see the notification. And if we do a long press, well, currently you can see nothing is going on. So now we need to find out that, hold on, why our general categories are not really working. It should be working, but next we need to find out what just happened and why we're not able to see our general categories. So let's go ahead and check it out. Now, this is a very common mistake. You create your category and you set the notification categories, like we're doing that on line number 44, but you also need to set the category identifier for the content. And it must use the same category identifier. So in this case, I'm just going to say category identifier equals to notification category.general.raw value. Once we have set up the category identifier, we can schedule a new local notification. And this time, when the notification appears and we perform a click press on this, we can see the dismiss and the reminder options that we just implemented. We can click any of these and it just goes away. So this is really good. We have done a lot of work over here. Another thing that can benefit us is our notification currently. If I go ahead and run this, you will see that our notifications are kind of like not really fancy, meaning they get displayed, but it would be nice if they also have an image associated with them. So let's go ahead and see how we can add images. For adding the images, the first thing I'm going to do is add a resources folder. Now, this is a very common mistake. You create your category and you set the notification categories, like we're doing that on line number 44, but you also need to set the category identifier for the content. And it must use the same category identifier. So in this case, I'm just going to say category identifier equals to notification category.general.raw value. Once we have set up the category identifier, we can schedule a new local notification. And this time, when the notification appears and we perform a click press on this, we can see the dismiss and the reminder options that we just implemented. We can click any of these and it just goes away. So this is really good. We have done a lot of work over here. Another thing that can benefit us is our notification currently. If I go ahead and run this, you will see that our notifications are kind of like not really fancy, meaning they get displayed, but it would be nice if they also have an image associated with them. So let's go ahead and see how we can add images. For adding the images, the first thing I'm going to do is add a resources folder. Inside the resources, I'm going to go ahead and get any image that you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop one of those images. You can see that I have an image called Coffee 2. This is taken from iStock. Once I have the resources folder, I'm just going to add an image of a coffee. There we go. And now we can start using this image so that it shows up in our notification. So I'm going to go right here. The first thing I'm going to do is get the URL from the bundle. So bundle.main.url for a resource which is called coffee with an extension, which is PNG. Next, I'm just going to go ahead and get an attachment, UN notification attachment, passing in the identifier. Again, you should try to use a unique identifier. Just going to say image, URL, we already have that, and any options, we don't really care that much about the options. Once we get that, we can go ahead and say content.attachments equals to an attachment. All right. Now, having done that, let's go ahead and run the application again. Schedule notification, let's go back. We can see the image, and if I press and hold, I can see the much bigger image. So now our notification is much richer as compared to the last time, which only had the actual text and not the image. Now, one other thing that you can do is whenever a notification is received or it will present, there is a delegate function that gets fired. Now, that delegate is called UN User Notification Center Delegate. And if you want to subscribe to that delegate, you can create a class that is going to be conforming to that delegate. It's called UN User Notification Center Delegate. There are two different functions in this delegate. Well, there are more, I guess, but the one that we are going to use is did receive, when you receive a notification, and will present, which is once a notification is about to be presented. Now, in the notification, which is, or this one, the will present, we can simply go ahead and pass in the completion handler with different kind of options that you want to present, which are enabled. So we can say over here banner, we can say sound, we can also say badge. For the did receive, this is where you can actually get the value if you want to put something like a user-defined value in the notification. Currently, we're not really putting anything, but you can if you want to. I can say response.notification.request.content.userinfo, and now whatever I put in the notification, I can access it. Don't forget to call completion handler also. But this time, you don't really have to pass anything to it. Now the question is, well, where is this user info coming from? Well, you can add additional content, some custom content right there with your notification. Maybe you want to pass like a user ID or something associated with the user or something else. You can actually put it in the notification. So you can say custom data, which can be anything, and some data. All right. The only thing left to do, which is the most important thing, is you need to tell the notification center that the notification delegate is actually the class where all the did receive and will present will be forwarded. So this has to be done early on, preferably when the application is launched. So I'm going to go ahead and create an instance of the notification delegate class. And then finally, I will set the delegate to the delegate, where this delegate is actually the notification class that we just created. This means that whenever the did receive and will present delegate functions are fired, they are forwarded to these two functions, which are part of the notification delegate. Let's go ahead and run it. I'm going to go ahead and schedule a notification. Notification is scheduled. Now, as soon as the notification appears and I click on it, this did receive is going to get called, and you can see that we were able to send some custom data. So this was part of the user info, which we were able to receive right there. And this user info was injected because it was part of the content for the notification. And that's pretty much it. In this lecture, you learn about how to create notifications using Swift and in our SwiftUI application. If you like this course and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my courses on Udemy. I have a lot of courses about iOS development as well as Flutter and also web development. But my main focus has always been iOS development. You can actually see my latest course, which is Programming macOS using SwiftUI project-based learning course. Definitely check that one out. I also have a cookbook course which contains over 100 SwiftUI recipes. If you're learning core data, then I have a best-selling course on core data. Also for combined framework, MVVM design patterns, SwiftUI, test image development, and a lot more. So definitely check out my courses. You can find the links right there in the YouTube description. Thank you so much, and I really hope you enjoy the course.